probably know someone who says that they're immune to edibles, and you know somebody else who says that they're overly sensitive to them. So what is going on here? Today I will explain the science behind edibles. There are a whole bunch of potential different reasons for this. One is that you just might not have gotten good edibles. Like maybe they just have terrible potency. Maybe the THC was unequally distributed amongst the different little pieces of them. And they've done recent studies showing that the amount of THC that's in the edible is not actually that accurate in terms of what it says on the packaging. So studies of edibles have suggested that there can be anywhere from 300 milligrams less in terms of the amount of THC than what they say in the packaging, up to 5,500 milligrams more than what is on the package. So that will be a bad time if you take that edible. And if you've spent any time in a dispensary, you know that certain brands are seemingly sketchier than others. Some might have quality control issues. And it could be that you just didn't get a high enough dose. So when you take an edible, it goes through first pass metabolism, which means that some of the drug is actually broken down by your system before it is actually put into your bloodstream. So you're only getting a certain fraction of the original dose. So for something like cannabis, you only get about 5 to 20% of the original dose. Now that is not to suggest that you should just take higher doses, because you will not feel the effects for a while. And there are so many cases in which somebody's like, okay, I took like 20 mgs, I don't feel anything. And then they take more and then they feel a lot. And then there are people who have what is known as the bummer gene. I feel like there's a better name for that, by the way. I don't know why bummer gene is the one that has become the nickname for it. But the bummer gene is just basically saying that there are genetic differences in people that might lead some to be less susceptible to the effects of THC. So what happens is that delta-9 THC is broken down, first metabolized in your system into 11-hydroxy-THC. And the 11-hydroxy delta-9 THC, that is psychoactive. So that produces this like high in people. And then that is further oxidized into 11-nor-9 carboxy delta-9 THC. And that is inactive. So that's basically the end of the effects that you're going to see. Now, some people are faster metabolizers of this. So basically they break it down from that 11-hydroxy delta-9 THC into that 11-nor-9 carboxy delta-9 THC much faster, meaning that it becomes inactive much faster, and therefore you're not going to feel as many of the effects of the edibles. But then there are genetic differences that produce the opposite of that effect. So 1 in 4 people have this specific genetic polymorphism that leads to different levels of this enzyme. They basically have lower levels of this enzyme, which basically slows down that breakdown or conversion, which means that it lasts longer in your system and produces more of an effect. And it lasts longer and produces more of the negative effects. There are some people who are less likely to feel the effects and some people who are more likely to feel the effects. And speaking of people who are more likely to feel the effects, it seems like women actually kind of have a different conversion of THC in edibles as well, which makes them more likely to feel the effects. So they actually have a like higher level of THC in their blood even at the same dose. So women get a more potent effect and they're actually more likely to be addictive, which is true of like all other drugs. Women are far more likely to become addicted to a substance once they start using it. Men are more likely to try the substance in most drugs. And men are more likely to feel the negative effects of edibles as well. This might be dependent on body fat. That might explain some of the differences, but we don't know as much because, in fact, there are not that many studies on this. Most of these studies that have been done looking at cannabinoids are looking at CBD, not THC. Likely due to the fact that THC is still a Schedule I substance, so we are not really able to do the research on it. And then finally, there is a study that showed that there are actually differences in the edibles that make it more or less likely to feel an effect. So this was one of those weed van studies. So they basically have this like van that drives around and they have people go in and like use the substance and then come back out again because it's illegal federally. So it's very difficult to do this research. So they have people go in, take an edible, and then come out, and then they measure all sorts of things. And what they found was that if they had an edible with CBD alone, it didn't produce any psychoactive effects. There was no high, shocking. And people had a high if they took edibles that contained both THC and THC plus CBD. But what we saw is that it actually took less of a dose of THC with CBD to produce that high versus that THC alone. So there's something about adding that CBD that seems to make the THC more powerful in edibles. So yeah, there are some people who don't feel the effects of edibles. There are also about 1 in 4 people who feel more of an effect of edibles. Don't assume that the one dose that somebody is taking is going to produce similar effects in everyone.